We're back with password. Time to return to the manor and see what's going on day 13. And this is going to be Dean's day 13, just following on from the previous video, just so I can try and get caught up to Grizz, because I've been getting a bit far behind on these videos. So we're going to just run through Dean's day today, and then later on, when I have some more time and I'm not so pressured to be catching up with people, then we can see some of the other stuff and go back in time slightly to pick it up. But for now, let's start where we left off, end of day 12. It was cold. Not in a way that throwing on more clothes could fix, but something chilling at my core. When I opened my eyes, it was the crack of dawn, at least based off the light slowly filtering in from the window. That cold feeling was still clung to me, almost like a blanket I couldn't just shrug off. I'd have thought that Oswin being out in the open would have made me feel better, one less secret weighing me down that should have been helping. If anything, I felt worse. My throat was dry, my fur tingled, and I got up to have a shower. Not that it did much good. The water was hot and I sighed out, basking in it, but the feeling lasted only while I was under the water. I wondered if Orlando would hate me for thinking of him right now, not as a friend, but as a convenient heater. Made all the worse, he made a point of sacrificing his own happiness for mine, leaving me a mess of what to think. Obviously I cared for Orlando as more than just a heater, and more than just a regular friend too. With a sigh, I resigned to lay on my bed staring at the ceiling. The cold transitioned into a numbness that covered my entire body, something that felt like I was covered by something matting my fur together. Closing my eyes, I wondered where things stood after last night. But the sudden onset of pain coursing through my head made me yelp, clutching my head. There were so many questions, but not enough answers. Oswin was around, so maybe the focus could be on him instead of me. It'd give me some freedom to think, for people to leave me alone. But was that what I really wanted? Maybe I wanted someone to give me attention, to notice me, to save me. The sound that came out of my mouth was feeble, tired, and elongated wide in the registers as the sound a wounded animal would make. Sitting upright as I heard a knock on my door, I wondered who it could be at this hour. Come in? Sal slipped quietly into my room and closed the door behind him, keeping his gaze elsewhere. Hey, Sal. Yes, hello. He seemed to go to speak a few times, thinking over his words before settling on what he wanted to say. I wanted to see if you were awake. I thought you might be. Shuffling closer, he stopped halfway between the door and my bed, quickly looking me over. You know I am. Normally up, I mean. What's wrong, Sal? Me? Oh, right. I just wanted to check in on how you were going. You weren't at dinner. You're likely hungry, and there's that other ball. Oswin? Right. He trailed off there, looking uncertain. There's so many things Inching closer, he stopped just shy of the bed. Orlando came to me last night. For all the panic that was going on, he came to me in tears. The idea made me sit up, frowning. Sal sat down carefully on the bed, rubbing his arms. He's terrified, but he knows when to seek help. He wanted grounding and reassurance things are going to be okay. Okay? Sal sighed, shaking his head. Why haven't you done that? If not me, then Tyson, or Orlando, Hoss, or Roswell, or anyone. I didn't have an answer, instead just sitting there with my mouth parted, ready to defend myself, but no words came. My concern is that if I don't press you to talk about it, you never will. But what if I don't want to talk about it? Flashing him a wry smile, he stared at me, expressionless for a few moments before standing again. Fair enough. Sorry to have bothered you, Dave. He walked towards the door and quickly left before I had much time to really process what he was doing. Alone once again, I sighed out, shifting so I was comfortable in my bed again. I listened to the sound of the house, the creaking walls and the sound of birds outside my window. More time passed and I could hear the others moving about, tiredly greeting one another. Slipping out of my room, I wandered downstairs, following in the wake of my friends who seemed to be heading towards the dining room for breakfast. What do you think you're doing? Rubbing my eyes, I took stock of what was happening. I saw Oswin sitting at the table across from Roswell, clutching his coffee much in the same way I would. Oh, nothing? Roswell was helping himself to some cereal, eyes focused on the older boar opposite him. I was eating breakfast. Oswin's eyes bulged as the last few crumbs of cereal fell out of the box, signaling that there was nothing left. Good morning. My greeting went ignored as Oswin's jaw was clenched, and he continued staring at Roswell. The others seemed to pay them no mind, some taking a seat at the table while a couple others went into the kitchen. That better have not been the last box, Roswell. I thought this cereal was for kids based on the slogan on the box. I don't know why you're kicking up such a fuss over it, Mr. Hammond. Why, you little Benson! Oswin hollered, looking around quickly for the butler. A few of us flinched but went back to groggily sitting at the table. Sure enough, Benson emerged with the rest of those missing at the table, and food was brought along with them. Yes, Master Oswin. Did you give Roswell that cereal box? I did not, Master Oswin. Is there a problem? A problem? There won't be so long as there's another box remaining. Then by all means you're welcome to check while I attend our guests. You're the butler, you check. Ah, but what host would I be if I neglected the needs of our guests? No reply came from Oswin, instead just looking between his butler and Roswell with a scowl. Now, if you were that bothered by the lack of your preferred breakfast, you have 2 legs of your own, sir. You're welcome to check the pantry. A few moments later, and he stood suddenly, grunting once before stomping over the kitchen and throwing the door open to disappear into the adjoining room. And now then, Master Roswell, did you really need to provoke Master Oswin like that? Oh, not really. Good morning, Master Dave. Did you require coffee? Is Oswin going to be all right? That is something I wouldn't worry yourself over. Yeah. Orlando piped up from nearby, keeping his eyes on the food he brought out. It was like this at dinner too. Roswell asked him a bunch of questions. He figured out what buttons to press really quickly. Hey, the last night I just had a lot of pent-up curiosity that I figured he'd make for a good person to vent to. By asking him questions non-stop, he looked ready to throttle you. Had Master Roswell not been as slippery as he proved, he might have. You wouldn't really let that happen though, would you? Of course not, Master Dave. I may serve Master Oswin and his butler, but I'm not about to let him bring harm to our guests. Or act as a child. Benson continued on and Roswell started eating his cereal while I grabbed a piece of toast. Going without coffee today? Well, that's unlike you. Huh? Oh, right. Pouring myself a mug from the pot on the table, I had the sugar and milk passed me carefully by Orlando. Thanks. Sure, no problem. Yeah, okay. I caught Sal nudging Dean, who seemed to pick up that he was meant to do something. Oh, right. Orlando, how are you holding up? Good. He knows, Orlando. Oh, then could be better. I'll be fine, I think. You sure? Don't need, I don't know, something to help things along? A talk, a distraction? I sank in my chair. Part of me felt this was just for show, or to highlight where I was failing. Well, I talked to Sal about stuff last night, but if we've got a plan for something to do later, I'm interested in keeping my mind busy. Well, good. How about we round up people and just, I don't know, we could bust out a big game that we can all play. Yeah, I think I'd like that. They continued talking. Orlando's spirits seemed to pick up. Turning my attention to Hoss and Tyson, they seemed to already be talking about something. Oh, I'm telling you, you're picking one today.
If you're lucky.
What are you two talking about?
Nothing important.
Nothing important? Jeez, you have a long way to go.
It's just a... whatever you call it. I don't even have a favourite show. You asked me to pick a favourite character from everything you watched.
Which is a very important step in the process, Big Dog. I don't think you should call him that, Horse. Oh, why not? Ty doesn't... I mean, he... Tyson looked at me funny, somewhat confused.
What?
I thought, with the dog thing... Ty grumbled, rubbing his head.
He's your friend. You should know what he's like.
I forced it on him and made him accept it. But how? That's a secret.
He's an annoying asshole mostly, but it's fine. I can take it like a man. I have a good enough incentive to anyway.
Oh? He gave me a hard stare before nodding, looking back to Hoss.
Anyway, I'm not picking one.
Come on, it's not that hard. Even Dave has one. Even if his taste is to be refined. Refined?
He's saying you have shit taste, pup.
I don't. You do, but that's alright. Different strokes and all that. There was something else weighing me down now. The judgment of what I find appealing and what I like. Normally we go back and forth, not just Hoss and I, but Roswell and Orlando too. But now with everything else, it was just wearing me down. Oh, right, of course. I chuckled, focusing just on my coffee instead.
Dave, listen. You want to watch anime with us later?
Oh, already taking the initiative? Gonna show me your favourites?
Dude, what the hell? I'm allowed to invite who I want.
Thanks, but no thanks. I flashed him a weak smile as I stood. Got plans already? Something like that, but maybe I can join you guys later? Ty sighed and leaned back in his chair, rolling his shoulders.
Sure, pup, sure.
Nodding to him, I stood up from the table and wandered down to the kitchen with my mug in hand. Even having missed dinner, I wasn't all that hungry, but I wanted an excuse to get away from the table.
Where's the blasted...
As I entered, I looked at Benson, who was off to the side, watching as Oswin dug around in the pantry. Pay him no mind, Master Dave. This is just Master Oswin sourcing his own breakfast. He straightened, setting a colourful box on the counter and sighing out.
That boy's lucky there's another box.
Perhaps this is a sign that you should leave the children's cereal for the children, sir?
I'm a grown man. If I want sugar cereal for breakfast, then I'll be damned if I can't make that decision freely.
But what about your teeth? Or eggs?
Eggs?
And He does have a point, sir. Scrambled eggs is something manageable.
Chocolate cake.
Chocolate cake? You are not having chocolate cake for breakfast.
Why not?
Do you really think that's an appropriate meal choice for first thing in the morning?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Benson.
I do. Really? Why? I thought cake was for dessert or whatever. Be that as it may, sir, I'm not making you chocolate cake for breakfast.
And sugar cereal?
But now we're back to scrambled eggs, right? Did you want eggs, Master Dave? I quickly shook my head, heading over the coffee machine instead to contemplate if I need another cup or if I should go without.
Dave, how are you feeling?
Fine. You don't sound fine, my boy. I'm fine, really. How did last night go?
Oh, fine.
I shot him a look and he gave me one back, accompanied with a raised brow.
Should it not have been?
No, I guess going fine is a good thing. Master Roswell entertained Master Oswald with enough questions to keep most of your friends satisfied with his presence here. I turned to Oswald for clarification. He nodded.
Quite a mind in that head of his.
His aptitude of being able to find what people tick is truly worrying, however. I dare say you missed the show, Master Dave. With a grunt, Oswin started pouring himself some cereal, earning himself an annoyed if fleeting look from Benson. Oh, yeah, you said that Roswell's been slippery and Oswin would have throttled him if he'd caught him, right?
He was faster than I gave him credit for. It's a wonder that bastard child is as fast as he is, given how pudgy he is in the middle.
That's not very nice.
Just stating fact. It makes you feel better, considering my jealousy showed in that I wish I had less weight to slow me down. And I see you're going to great lengths to remedy that fact by eating your second bowl of cereal.
Grumbling, Oswin crunched what mouthful he had before defiantly shoveling another spoonful of cereal into his mouth.
Now, my boy, are you sure you didn't want anything for breakfast? Another cup of coffee, perhaps?
Still standing by the coffee machine, I gave it a once-over before shaking my head again. No thanks, Sam. I'll be alright. I wandered out from the kitchen to the hall leading to the foyer. My friends were on the other side of the wall conversing among themselves. While I couldn't hear specifics, I could make out they seemed happy enough. So why wasn't I happy? When I thought about where my sadness stemmed from, there was only really one place. A room that I barely lingered in if I didn't need to. It had been that way for... well, it was the room where I was told what had happened. Most of the time when I went for a walk, it was to get out to the house. Just down the street and rarely in the wilderness like this. Dean had driven me out to a big garden before and we'd walked around together, but that was just something to do, right? Granted, with how often our hands touched, I assumed that maybe it was a date right up to until he told me it wasn't one. Another one of those infamous non-dates we were prone to going on. Then there was Tyson and the occasional trips down to the beach. I had a lot of great memories, despite getting told constantly not to eat ice cream inside the car. I looked around at the trees before glancing back at the house. I wandered further in, maybe I could have some alone time, right? I knew it was wrong. I knew that there were dangers in the forest given the first time Dean had taken me out here. I could get lost and end up like Roswell. Was spending a night out in the woods all that bad? If I wasn't around, I couldn't be hurt by what the vault showed me. I wouldn't have to look at my friends looking at me funny. Was it pity? Disappointment? I didn't really know. Trudging into the forest, I left them all behind. Eventually, I hit the river that Dean had taken me to. Whether I was walking for the better part of an hour or longer to get there, I couldn't say. But the sound of the water was enough of a guide for where I was headed, and worst case scenario, Dean would know where to find me. Taking a look around, it seemed as if I was totally alone. No fish in the river, no sounds of other animals or birds or anyone else nearby. I almost felt like I was the last one standing as I stood at the edge of the water, looking down into my reflection. Without the choking smell of chlorine, I sighed out and looked at the hyena staring back at me. My hands traced my cheeks, across my underbite to my nose. The way the water rippled made me squint to make out the details. Shy of the fur colour, I was a spitting image of my dad. It was a legacy that I wasn't sure I liked now. Looking at myself in the mirror was a harsh reminder of him gone, right down to being unable to smile at my reflection. I thought about if he was watching over me, and what hope that sentiment meant felt more like a curse weighing me down. Not through anyone else's fault but my own. Looking up the river, it winded through the trees, cascading over a cliff off in the distance and further on. Where did the river start? Was there anything else out there? Wandering upstream, I figured I'd see where it went. Climbing up a steep incline near the waterfall, I dusted myself off and looked around for anything else that might have looked different. From what I could tell, this clearing by the river seemed to be a makeshift campsite. I wonder. There was a ring of stones placed somewhat in the middle of the clearing, along with a large log sitting nearby acting as a bench. Taking a seat, I looked around. It seemed nice enough, but a crisp breeze made me realise just how cold it could get out here late at night. I closed my eyes and breathed in deep, the fresh air helping clear my head a little bit. But with a clear mind, thoughts came rushing in to fill the space, making me think of home.
Come on, sport.
Where are we going? Dad puffed out his chest, hands on his hips proudly.
Don't want an adventure with your old man? Always, Dad. Good. And buckle up, so we're going to get something awesome to eat when we get there.
Is Mom coming?
Not this time, Bud. She's at work.
Almost seems like she never wants to come out with us anymore. I sighed, hopping into the car and closing the door before buckling myself in. Dad tapped on the window, indicating for me to lower it.
Why the long face, bucko?
Fidgeting in my chair, I tried to keep my eyes anywhere than his as he stuck his head through the window slightly to look at me properly, fishing for an answer. No reason, I guess.
Seems like there might be one.
You won't get mad at me, right?
No matter what. So, what's got you down?
Mom still loves me too, right?
What?
It's enough to make him recoil and hit his head on the roof of the car as he pulled back in shock.
What would make you think that?
Just, she's barely home and I don't really remember the last time she smiled at me. Did I do something wrong?
Don't you ever think we don't love you, David. You did nothing wrong, I promise.
He had his serious tone going, staring me down. I'm sorry. Dad sighed out, running his hands through his fur, while wandering around the car and jumping in the driver's seat and buckling himself in. We didn't leave the driveway. Instead, his fingers just drummed on the steering wheel. It's the only sound we had, as he hadn't even started the car. When he stopped, I turned to look at him. He just smiled at me. Maybe it was a brave face or something else I couldn't say. I remembered what he said next, or at least the individual words, but for the life of me I couldn't remember specifically how it sounded. I love you. I opened my eyes, the campsite came back into view. The world around me hadn't changed outside the faint sounds of nature, now being something I was more aware of. Had it all just been drowned out as I lost myself in my head, or... In a daze, my eyes looked to the water as I sat on the log, watching it flow steadily downstream. I wondered what would happen if I drowned right here, if this was the place I died. I wondered if it would hurt, or if some miracle would come along and stop it from happening. I wondered why the idea didn't scare me as much as it probably should have. Was I a coward? Selfish? Probably. For all the places to choose, at least here was peaceful. It would solve all my problems in one go. My sadness, my stress and guilt. I'd be able to see Dad again, hopefully. Before I knew it, I was standing up and slowly walking towards the water's edge. My feet felt heavy, my chest felt light. I wasn't having trouble breathing, for each breath rattled out of my barely parted mouth. Step by step I got closer, not breaking stride once with my eyes locked on the spot somewhere in the middle of the river. Before I could second guess if I was going to follow through or fall into the water, I stepped on something solid but smooth. Enough to make me look down and see what it was. What's... I looked at what I'd picked up, rolling it over in my hand. A thick glass syringe, with its needle capped off by some sort of plastic thing at the end. Had it been used? Why was it out here? In the sunlight I caught the glint of something half buried underneath some fallen leaves, and now distracted from what I was originally doing, I went to investigate. Kneeling down, I picked up what that was too, assuming another needle, but instead it was a bottle. Small, unassuming outside the label it had neatly printed on its front. Cryptok. The first word was long, and I wasn't sure I knew exactly how to pronounce it. The second word I'd heard before. Some sort of illness that Mom had mentioned once, I think. With an item in each hand, I looked between the two. The bottle was empty, the foil seal on the top punctured. The needle, while capped, still had what looked like be condensation inside. A few minutes later I yelped and quickly dropped both, drawing a conclusion I didn't quite want to believe. Did someone inject themselves here? Or did someone else inject another person? The only person I knew to be out here was Roswell. Well, Roswell and whatever that white thing I saw was. I picked both up and put them in my pocket carefully. Oswin said things had gone missing from his lab, so maybe this was some of it. Either way, he'd know better. My mind raced with what it all meant as I looked around again. My resolve on focus on going into the river was shot, and likely for the better. But instead it was replaced with curiosity, and I headed upstream. I lost track of how long I walked, but I was in no hurry, taking occasional breaks to look about the trees. Something gave me the impression I was being watched. Before me, sitting right along the water's edge, was a rundown mill. Moss and vines seemed to have claimed the place after many years of no use. Just like before, this place seemed quiet and serene. I'd have said that it felt like I was truly alone, if the feeling that I was being watched didn't get stronger the longer I stood out in the open. Is anyone there? Carefully looking around, I called out quietly. Silence. Nothing but silence to answer my question. I didn't really want to go inside the mill. After all, who knows what could have been in there, or if I wouldn't accidentally step on a loose floor panel and get entrapped. It was a reminder I didn't tell anyone where I was going, but I had only myself to blame. I couldn't get angry about them not coming to save me because I didn't give them the chance. Not only that, but when I got back I had no excuse than to be mad at me for being a hypocrite yet again. I slumped my shoulders and sighed, leaning up against one of the beams holding up a trough up above. Braced against something, I whined out, my troubles making me hesitate in turning back now. My ears perked at the sound of a twig snapping, and I looked around. Eyes darting around the trees for its source, I heard it again. Out in the open, the sound echoed around me, and it was hard to place exactly where it had come from. Being out in the open left me exposed, and I felt it now, deciding that heading inside might not be the worst idea, all things considered. Inside the mill was dirty, and much like the outside, nature had claimed most of it. Walls were cracked, but the stonework held together despite the vines growing through a hole in one of the walls. Looking behind me to see if I was being followed, I ducked behind the doorway to try and stay out of sight. Not that it'd help if I'd already been spotted. Reaching inside my pocket, I held on to the syringe, reminding myself that I had something in the way of a weapon just in case things went sour. It didn't look like there were any abandoned tools nearby that would make for a better option anyway. I heard another twig snap, followed by someone calling out. "Hello, someone around out there?" The voice had a tinge of amusement to it. Somewhat squeaky too, so I could rule out being any of my friends. Even Oswald and Benson didn't have a voice that matched that. Peering around the corner, I couldn't see anything. No sign of whatever it was that was also out here. They kept calling, asking where I was hiding, but it seems they weren't making any effort to get closer. I waited up heading further into the mill in an effort to hide, as leaving would just let whoever was calling out find me, right? It grew colder as I ventured further in, and it seemed like I was heading more underground too. The air was stale down here, and there were half-broken slabs of concrete making up the flooring. Large pipes and machines seemed to be everywhere, all powered by the water wheel outside. Or if it was powered by anything else, I couldn't see a generator. There was something about this place that made me feel odd. The ceiling was high up above. Jagged pieces of metal jutted out at odd angles from the ceiling from where they'd rusted and fallen apart over time. How deep did this place go underground? What was it for? Lumber? Off the side there seemed to be a chute for something to drop down from the level above, onto a conveyor belt that ran along one side of the wall. At the end was a saw blade, ready to cut whatever it was sent down the path to it. There was something about this place that I couldn't quite place. It wasn't sadness, but a feeling of unease that came from within. Familiar in a way, but I couldn't place how. "Hello!" There was that voice again, smug and amused as before, but now closer. The voice echoed through the building, and I backed up against one of the large metal chambers that dotted the room I was in. Footsteps, light but somewhat clumsy maybe. That wasn't what stuck out to me. As good as my nose was, I couldn't smell them at all. Nothing to distinguish who they could be or anything. Was it because of the air in here? Straining my ears, I listened as they moved around, searching for me. They could have been friendly for all I knew, but something about this just seemed like bad news. Their footsteps sounded like they got closer before stopping entirely. Gripping the syringe tightly, I waited. And waited. I let out a breath I didn't realise I'd been holding, figuring that I must have misheard them leaving. Kaboo! The shock made me fall over and I hit my head hard as I landed, passing out. Ow. When I came to, I was back outside. It seemed dark and I wasn't sure exactly how long I'd been out for. I was only half certain of what I'd seen fight before falling over and sat up, groaning. Quickly checking my pocket, it seemed as though I had everything still, much to my relief. My head was still spinning, but I seemed unharmed outside my tumble. I let myself properly get my bearings. Whatever it was I ran into didn't seem to be around right now. I wobbled on my feet as I stood. How late is it? About 6. Whoa! I fell over again, landing on my rear and yelping as I nursed my tail.
What, you got curfew?
No, I mean, who, where,
Oh, scare ya? Not gonna laugh on me, are ya?
I stared at the hare, unsure what to make of things.
Yes, watching you has been a hope. I think you'd be so flyly. More leisure than any of the game out here, that's for sure.
The game? Animals?
You had it in one. Didn't expect a hyena at you, though.
He gestured wide with his arms briefly before staring at me some more.
What's your name, kid?
Dave?
Now, what's a hyena like yourself doing like this far out, huh?
Just on a walk, I guess.
A walk on this mountain?
Yeah? The hare whistled, looking around.
Must be a long walk, given you look like city folk.
Well, no, The hare stared at me some more, waiting.
Well, you couldn't just walk here from the city. My guess is you're one of those Hammond kids.
Me? No, I'm just staying there, I guess. His attitude seemed to shift. Disappointment, maybe? It was hard to tell.
Just a guest? A shame.
Shame how?
Well, getting good with a rich folk is never a bad thing. Can't one of the guests getting lost out in the woods now, can we?
I'm not that lost, Mr...
Oh, me? I'm nobody, but call me Jack.
Jack, okay. That smile he wore fell off somehow. So much so that when I smiled back, I felt like I'd something wrong.
Well then, Dave, you had a bit of a fall inside the mill, so I brought you out here.
Only because you snuck up on me.
Really now? Didn't think you'd scare so easy when you're out here by yourself. Didn't think a place as big as the Hammonds would host only one guest at a time either.
Oh, it's not just me.
Whole family of hyenas visiting? Well, I imagine the house will be full of laughs then.
No, it's just me and some friends.
Friends?
It's almost as if the concept was foreign to him with how thoughtfully he seemed to be after echoing what I've said.
Sounds fun.
It's been something like that.
You're kidding? A whole mansion you ain't having fun?
I groaned and slumped on the spot. There's been just a lot going on back at the house. I probably shouldn't get into it.
No, well, why's that?
You know the house, right? I mean, of course you do, because you know the name of the person that owns it, so...
Oh, yeah, plenty of stories about that place.
There are stories?
Sure is. Recluse lives there now with his butler, smart as a whip, and occasionally gets a visitor every now and again.
That's not much of a story.
Well, that's not the story. The story is he's got a machine in his basement. You wouldn't have to have seen it given you're living there, have you?
Oh, you mean... I caught myself before I said anything more, noticing Jack's eyes light up the moment I trailed off.
So it does exist? Well, it's nice to hear given what I know about it.
You've heard about it too?
Well, I've been told about it, sure. I'll not remember talking for a time machine someone's built.
It wasn't a time machine, was it? Is that why the door hadn't opened? Was Oswin just lying about it? No, that couldn't have been it. Oswin had said the machine works on trauma. He said everything just repeats over and over, so it's not letting you travel through time as much as just looking at what happened last time. Well, maybe I should see if I can get it working when I'm back at the house next.
If you ever get there.
What?
Do you know your way back? Reckon you're stuck without a guide.
Oh, I'm sure I could figure it out. I'll just head back down river until I find something familiar and then wander back from there.
River doesn't go anywhere near the house. You'd end up getting to a waterfall or sheer cliff or you go back to the city too.
It's not that bad, is it?
Oh, yeah, one can find out.
What about you? Why are you even out here?
Oh, just hunting. After all, these are some big mountains. There's nothing like being out where no one else is around to bother you.
I'm sorry if I bothered you then. I just figured the mill was something neat to look at.
No bother. Wondered who was wandering around out here. You sure you're fine to be heading back to the house by yourself?
Yeah, I'll be fine, thanks. Something wasn't right. Stranger danger was a thing I had been taught as a kid, and it didn't really sink in now as to what it had meant. I was getting an off feeling about Jack. Something about how he moved, talked, or even stood there as time went by.
You don't know your way back, Dave.
I'll figure it out.
You hit your head pretty hard, Dave. Maybe I should take you back to where I'm staying so you can rest.
No, I'm good, really. I took a couple of steps back, shooting him a wry smile. It wasn't at all convincing, but I didn't want to turn my back to him either.
You at least wanted me to point you in the right direction?
You know where the house is?
General location, sure. Wouldn't be much of a hunter if I couldn't navigate this forest now, would I?
Without me asking, he pointed in the direction away from the river, through the trees.
Yeah, that way. Drain might make it a little bit harder, but that's the direction the house is in. Got a long walk ahead of you, though.
I chanced to look in the direction he pointed out before looking back at him. Thanks.
Don't worry about it. I'm just going to head on back to my own little hidey hole, I think. Safe travels, Dave.
I watched as he turned on his heel and wandered off, disappearing out of sight in the opposite direction to where I was headed. Sighing out, I took a longer look at where I needed to go. Jack had the right of it and I had no idea really where I was. Best I could do was head down the river until I found the camp and go from there, right? Rather than cutting through the trees, I figured I'd wander back down river and keep in mind the direction he pointed out to me. I didn't really want to have a difficult walk ahead of me if I could avoid it. My stomach rumbled, now feeling a little hungry. It's what I got from not eating for almost 2 days now. What little I'd had just wasn't cutting it anymore. I wonder what's for dinner. I sat down the log to catch my breath, knowing I still had a while left to go before I got back to the house. My mind wandered back to those at the house, and it started to sink in how silly I'd been just leaving like I did. They were probably worried, and the guilt returned to rid me of my appetite. Putting out the needle and the bottle, I gave them another look over, considering I was where I'd found them. The needle you could probably buy just about anywhere, but the bottle is what worried me. It didn't seem likely this was just something you could pick up at the pharmacy. They might sell bottles of medicine rather than bottles of diseases, after all. What seemed strange to me, though, was why? If you're going to inject yourself with anything, why not medicine? Why not a poison? Or even if you weren't going to inject yourself, but try to inject someone you snuck up on, why not something more dangerous? Was the idea to pass this off as medicine and hope they didn't notice? Shaking my head, I put them back in my pocket. I just have to figure it out after I got back to the house. I looked up at the trees, noticing I was quickly losing light. I need to hurry if I was going to make it back to the house before it was completely dark. It was dark enough already. There was no wonder Roswell got stuck out here. Thinking back to where he'd been left out there, I wondered if it was better to just stay here for the night. Not that I really wanted to, but also I didn't want to get lost in the woods. I noticed some mushrooms growing nearby. I weighed up whether or not I was an option for dinner if I could figure out if they were safe. They'd be either chanterelles or jack-o'-lanterns. I was fairly certain I could tell them apart. But if they were some other third thing, I wouldn't know, and I didn't want to make my situation all the more worse. Sighing out, I then looked to the river. I could fish, maybe? Just find a sharp enough stick and try what they did on the television, but I could barely make out anything under the water to even know where to aim. I cradled my chin in my hands and thought it over with a sigh. Wait here or try and stumble through the woods in the dark to try and get back home. The sound of a twig snapping nearby made me look up. Jack reappeared, approaching slowly.
Still out here? Didn't I point you out the way back?
You did, but, you said difficult terrain? He chuckled, rolling his shoulders.
It was difficult terrain, huh? Good to know.
You know, I was wondering what you meant by that. Did you mean rocks or cliffs or...
Does it matter? Didn't end up going that way.
I guess not. He got closer, resting his foot on the log and leaning down to look at me. I leaned back away from him as he did so, reflexively going to the needle concealed in my pocket.
Planning on camping out here? Not a bad spot.
I haven't decided yet. I thought you went the other way. Why are you downstream?
You know me. Guess I got lost.
He chuckled low while keeping his eyes on me, inching closer still. For me, I shifted a little further back and he seemed to get the message.
You came out here all alone, didn't bring anything for supplies? What are you, an idiot?
That's not very nice.
No, it's not, but who the fuck cares anyway?
Yeah, well, I care. Leave me alone.
Calm now, Dave. Have you ever heard about the kindness of strangers? Maybe you should come back with me to my shelter and stay the night. So you can tell me all about your friends and what's got you down in the house you're staying at.
I stood, and for a moment it almost seemed like Jack's expression shifted towards a smug satisfaction. Then it faded away as soon as it was clear that I wasn't intending to follow him in any way. I'm going to head back now. Thanks for getting me out of the mill, I guess. In a flash he'd moved forward, grabbing me by the arm.
I don't take anything for free. You owe me. Hey, let me go. Not just yet, Dave. I know something you can pay me back with. That's the thing I want to know. You met the guy that owns the place, right?
I spoke without thinking. Trying to pull my arm away from him was my priority. Oswin Hammond. Right as I pulled, he let me go, letting me land on my back in the ground.
Oh, good. This makes this easier. What about his butler? He's still kicking?
Yes. He's old, but sure, he's around. Jack didn't seem to like that answer. His jaw clenched and he stared down at me with his voice low.
Well, that's just great, isn't it? Yeah, I was hoping it's going to be an easy job, too. Oh, well, I don't want a messy job when the pay is this good.
I don't understand. What do you mean? I got to my feet, edging away from Jack further. There was no point in being subtle about it now. I wanted to get away. All the while he just grinned, looming over me.
What I mean is I've been out here a week bored out of my mind. I want to have a little fun. So get to running, Dave. Let's play tag.
The moment I saw the knife, I ran. I didn't need to stick around to wonder what he was intending on doing with it. I had no idea where I was going. I could barely see, and it took everything I had to stop myself from tripping over the many roots that lined the forest floor. How I wished I was more fit. My heart was pounding in my chest and my lungs felt like they were on fire. It was a wonder that I hadn't collapsed from exhaustion. I felt a chill run down my spine as I heard Jack somewhere behind me, calling out in a sing-song sort of tone.
Dave, run as fast as you can.
It was a fear that I hadn't felt before. Cold and dark, somewhere deep down that seemed to keep me moving forward. It was different from the cliff and the river. It was different from back home. It was even different from thinking about my friends, and I wasn't sure if that was a good or bad thing. The darkness of the forest seemed to ease up. Maybe I was getting used to it, or maybe being chased with my life on the line was making things easier. Not that I had any way of knowing which way I was going.
Cannot do better than that, Dave.
I yelped as I rounded a tree and dove around Jack as he swiped lazily with his knife. I could feel the sting of it shear some of the fur off my ears, and I continued on.
Keep running. Playtime isn't over yet.
With one hand on my ear and the other propelling myself forward, I struggled to find my way. It all looked the same. The woods outside my breathing was quiet. Then I knew where to go. I didn't see it, but I could smell it. Cherry pie! I knew that smell. Orlando must have baked something to lead me back to the house. What guilt I would have felt about not doing the same thing for Roswell would need to wait. All I had to do was follow my nose and I'd be safe. I'd be with my friends. It wasn't home, but it'd do. Jack was still following me though. Every moment I had to stop to take a deep breath. I could hear him somewhere behind me approaching. He wasn't running like I was, but pacing himself. Maybe his stamina was just better. Then through the trees I could see the soft glow of lights. The smell of pie was growing stronger too. There, I'm there. I looked behind me and there was Jack, still with a knife and gaining speed, his white fur sticking out in the darkness of the night like a ghost.
Not there yet.
Whining, I tried to lose him the last little bit through the trees. Ron was choked to grab the back of my shirt, pulling me back towards him and then into a tree. Winded, I clutched my chest. The house was right there. When I turned to look, I felt the tip of Jack's knife at my throat. I closed my eyes. What else was there to do? It'd be over soon, hopefully. From how hard I was running, I could barely form words. It wasn't much of an upside, but at least I'd be able to find my body easily. The sound of a gunshot made us both jump. Just as quickly as I realised what had happened, I fell to the ground, covering my head. Cowering on the ground, I heard my assailant flee into the forest again. Despite being so close to the house, I didn't feel so good. I didn't feel safe. Instead, I felt sick, like I was able to pass out, but something was keeping me conscious. I couldn't keep my thoughts together. My tongue tangled, my inability to pull myself together was making me hyperventilate. The adrenaline was nice while I was running away, but now I could barely breathe as I clutched my chest. I collapsed to the ground, clutching my chest. Had I been shot? Had Jack? What had happened? Dave! Looking up, I could see Dean skid to a halt in front of me, dropping to his knees and holding me by the shoulders. I wanted to tell him what had just happened, what I'd seen and how I was feeling. But nothing came out of my mouth except a raspy breath and the onset of nausea. God, you're pale. Were you out in the forest all day? What happened? Dean, did you... I looked to Orlando, eased back onto my knees by Dean.
Everyone, Dean found him!
He was quick to leave again, rushing off somewhere out of sight. Clinging to Dean, I whined and gasped for air, my heart pounding in my chest. Trying to keep myself centered on Dean's honey-like scent, I struggled to calm myself down. It's Dave.
Yes, I can see that.
Oh, I heard a gunshot and...
We can discuss this later. Get the boy inside.
Dean picked me up and I clung to him, digging into the muscle and into the fur as if letting go was the same as dying then and there.
Why is that fucking rabbit?
I could tell it was Oswin, although his tone was different. Crazy almost, I could make out what seemed to be a revolver in his hand where he shoved it into his pocket.
Damn it all! Sir, now is not the time to be gallivanting around on a crusade over rabbits.
Oswin grunted, standing stiff. Was he the one that fired? How? From where? Opened my mouth to thank him, but nothing came out.
Well, at least Dave's accounted for now, but he's suffering.
The sound I made was a mix between a whine and rasping cough. The tightening in my chest became worse.
And do something about it. You're a doctor, right?
Again I tried to speak as Oswin stepped closer, looking me in the eye.
Set him down, Dean.
As if afraid of breaking me, he set me down on the stairs, sitting me against him for additional support. Well, it's all right, Dave. You're safe now.
You had us all worried.
Help. It took everything I had to get the word out, and I tried to stand, slipping on the stair below me and falling off the cold tiles of the foyer floor. In a flash, Dean was by my side as I heard the others rushing closer. We were in danger. They were all in danger. It was my fault. I couldn't breathe. My vision was blurred, and I was starting to lose my ability to hear.
I've got an idea.
A Tyson-shaped blur rushed past up the stairs until I could no longer discern his scent among the others. Dean seemed to know what his plan was and hurried along after him soon after.
Dave, listen to me. I need you to tell me where the rabbit went. You can't be serious. That's the priority for you right now?
Roswell went ignored, and Oswin stopped next to me, shifting me so we could make eye contact easier.
It's very important. Where did he go?
It took everything I had just to shake my head. The smell of gunpowder was strong on Oswin, and it was bringing memories to the surface that I couldn't fight off.
How should we get him somewhere?
Maybe we should at least pick him up off the floor. Dave, try to relax. I'll put you in your bed, and when you're ready you can tell us what happened. As Sal came down to pick me up, I pushed him away. I could do it. I had to. Dave, please.
Sal, stand back. What are you going to do?
In a flash, Oswin pulled something from his coat and thrust it against my neck, the sound of air escaping indicating something had happened. What did you do?
Something I've saved with that rabbit, but this should do to put Dave at ease.
Whatever they said next I didn't catch, instead passing out there on the floor. Started with my vision, then my body went numb, and then last goes my hearing, and the last voice I heard was Benson saying something. In a way, I was relieved now that everything had stopped. Was I dead? Was I asleep? Either way, all I could do was let whatever happens, happen. To be continued. That was day 13, and that was really something. And also you got the chance to figure out how someone works out a voice on the fly. Yes, I was actually figuring out the voice for that hare, whether his name is Jack or not, as we were going along. So I hope you enjoyed that one. Next video is going to be the smoke room with William's update finally. And that's kind of the last of the main ones I need to do. After that we'll go back into some Minotaur Hotel, which I've been ignoring a bit recently because I've been busy with everything else. So there'll be a couple more videos planned already. And until next time, bye for now.